She was just a teenager, walking home from practice, when flashing lights cut through the dark, pulled over for no reason, searched without cause, and mocked when she whispered a truth no one believed. Her mother wasn't ordinary. She was military, elite, and feared, but the officer only laughed, certain this girl's words were nothing but lies. He had no idea who was about to step out of the shadows. What happened next shook the entire street, and revealed something far bigger than just one traffic stop that it was supposed to be just another evening. 14-year-old Maya had stayed late after school, finishing track practice and chatting with her teammates before heading home. The fall air was cool, the kind that makes every breath feel sharp, and she clutched her backpack straps as she walked down the familiar stretch of road that curved toward her neighborhood. Maya was the kind of girl teachers described as disciplined, a quiet student who worked hard, rarely broke rules, and never wanted attention. She liked it that way. Her life was simple, or at least it looked that way to most people. At school, she blended in. She kept her grades high, avoided drama, and focused on running. The track was her sanctuary. Every lap she completed gave her a sense of control, a rhythm that blocked out the noise of everything else. But beyond that calm exterior, Maya carried the weight of something few of her classmates ever knew. Her mother wasn't just any parent, she was part of an elite military unit, a woman who spent months overseas, trained in ways most civilians could hardly imagine. To Maya, she wasn't some superhero figure. She was just mom, strict, protective, but also the strongest person she knew. Most of the time, Maya kept that fact to herself. She knew people wouldn't understand. And she knew, more importantly, that not everyone respected families like hers. It wasn't just about being military, it was about being black, living in a neighborhood where assumptions came first and questions rarely followed. That evening, the sky was beginning to dim, streetlights flickering away one by one. Maya walked with the steady rhythm of someone who had taken the same path countless times. She had earbuds tucked in, but the volume was low enough to hear cars passing. One slowed down as it came behind her. She noticed only because the headlights lingered longer than usual. At first, she brushed it off. People slowed in this area all the time, looking for an address, making a call, or simply distracted. But when the tires crunched to a halt on the side of the road, just ahead of her, Maya's pace instinctively faltered. The car door opened, and a uniformed officer stepped out. He looked ordinary at first glance, tall, broad-shouldered, with a hardened expression, but there was something in his eyes that wasn't just professional authority. It was suspicion. Maya had seen that look before. She knew it meant trouble. Her chest tightened, though she hadn't done anything wrong. She wasn't trespassing. She wasn't breaking curfew. She wasn't even running on the street. She was just walking home, yet she could already feel that sinking pressure of being singled out for reasons that had nothing to do with her actions. She pulled her backpack closer to her chest and tried to keep moving, hoping maybe he'd just drive off after a quick look. But the sound of his boots hitting the pavement told her otherwise. His presence was heavy, deliberate, and unshakable. Maya reminded herself of what her mother always said: stay calm, be respectful, don't give anyone an excuse. Still, the pit in her stomach grew, because she knew from the stories, from the news, from whispers in her own community, sometimes even when you did everything right, it wasn't enough. What Maya didn't realize in that moment was that this encounter wasn't going to be just another uncomfortable stop. It would test her patience, her dignity, and the very truth of who she was. And when her mother finally arrived on the scene, the night would transform from an ordinary walk home into a moment no one present would ever forget. The officer's boots echoed against the pavement, steady, unhurried, as if he already knew the outcome of this encounter. Maya's steps faltered. She wasn't sure if she should stop or keep walking, but her body went rigid before she could even decide. "Where are you headed?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. His tone was sharp, clipped, the kind that demanded obedience, not answers. Maya swallowed. Her throat felt dry. She stammered out something about going home, but her words barely carried in the air. The officer didn't seem to care. He circled her slowly, like she was an object under inspection. His eyes darted to her backpack, to her clothes, to her skin. Every glance weighted with judgment. He asked for her ID. She explained she was only 14, that she didn't carry one yet. His smirk told her everything she needed to know. To him, she wasn't a child walking home from practice. She was a target. The tension deepened with every second he lingered. He called into his radio, muttering something about a suspicious minor walking alone. Maya's stomach twisted. Suspicious? For walking? For existing in the wrong place at the wrong time? She wanted to explain more, to say something that would make the stop end. But every instinct told her that any sudden movement, any wrong word, could spark something worse. Cars drove by in the distance, headlights flashing across the scene. No one stopped. No one slowed down. To them, it probably looked like nothing more than routine police work. But to Maya, every breath felt like a countdown she couldn't control. The officer demanded to know why she was out so late. She explained track practice had run long. He asked why she wasn't with a parent. She said her mom was at work. That answer only seemed to amuse him. He leaned in, lowering his voice. And what does your mom do exactly? Maya hesitated. She knew the truth would sound unbelievable to him, but with fear rising in her chest, she blurted it out anyway. Her mother was in the military, part of special forces. For a second, silence hung in the air. Then came the laugh, cold, mocking, sharp enough to sting. He threw his head back like she'd just told the funniest lie in the world. Special forces? He repeated, sure she is. The way he sneered made Maya's heart pound faster. She tried to insist it was true, but the more she spoke, the more his grin widened. To him, her words weren't just lies, they were entertainment. But the mocking didn't stop there. He began patting down her backpack without permission, tossing aside her notebooks and track shoes onto the curb. Maya's face burned with humiliation. She wanted to reach for her belongings, but fear glued her hands to her sides. Every second stretched longer. His laughter, his words, his careless treatment of her things, all of it blended into a storm of rage and helplessness inside her. She thought about running, but where would she go? Running would only prove his twisted assumptions. Standing still felt just as dangerous. Then he said something that made her blood run cold. Maybe we should take a little ride. Get this story straight. At the station, the air around Maya seemed to freeze. A ride? To the station? Alone at night, with no witnesses? Her chest tightened, panic clawing at her throat. She thought of her mother's warnings, the rules drilled into her about surviving encounters like this. Stay calm. Don't resist. Don't escalate. But how do you stay calm when someone already sees you as guilty? Just as the officer reached for her arm, a new sound broke the tension, the low, rumbling growl of a vehicle pulling up. Its headlights swept across the street, cutting through the dark. The officer paused, annoyed, his grip hovering inches from her sleeve. The car door opened. Heavy boots hit the ground. A figure began walking toward them, silhouette sharp against the glow of the streetlight. Maya's heart skipped. She knew that walk, that posture, that presence. Her mother had arrived, but the officer didn't know it yet. And the moment he turned to face her, everything in the night shifted. The moment Maya saw her mother step out of the vehicle, relief should have washed over her, but it didn't. The tension didn't vanish. It only sharpened, because her mother wasn't smiling, wasn't rushing to embrace her. She was calm, deliberate, and her silence carried more power than any raised voice ever could. The officer's smirk lingered, though a flicker of unease crossed his face. He wasn't used to being challenged, certainly not by someone walking with that kind of authority. Evening, he muttered, trying to sound casual, his hand still hovering too close to Maya's arm. Her mother's eyes dropped briefly to that hand. The look alone was enough to make him retract it, but his arrogance didn't fade. He squared his shoulders, speaking louder now as though asserting control. Ma'am, this girl says you're her mother. She's out here making claims I don't buy for a second. Special forces? That's a good one. Maya's stomach churned. The disrespect in his voice wasn't hidden. It wasn't even restrained. He laughed again, as if daring her mother to prove him wrong. But her mother didn't answer right away. She closed the space between them with the kind of precision that came from years of discipline. Every step made the officer's posture stiffen, though he fought to mask it. She stopped just inches, From him, her eyes level with his, steady and unblinking, the street was quiet. Even the hum of cars in the distance seemed to vanish. Then, in one swift movement, her mother reached into her jacket and pulled out her identification, a badge not just of service but of rank. The metal caught the light, and for a brief second, the entire atmosphere shifted. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. The officer's smirk faltered. His eyes darted to the credentials, then back to her. He blinked, as if refusing to process what was right in front of him. This can't be, he stammered. But her mother cut him off, her voice low and steady, carrying the weight of someone used to commanding rooms, not asking for respect but demanding it. You laid hands on my daughter. You mocked her. You humiliated her. And you thought no one would hold you accountable. Maya felt her knees weaken. Hearing those words spoken aloud was like watching the truth finally break free. For the first time that night, she wasn't the only one carrying the burden of being disbelieved. The officer tried to recover, stuttering something about protocol and suspicious activity. But his words rang hollow. His authority, so inflated only moments ago, was deflating with every second he stood in her presence. Her mother leaned closer, so close he had no choice but to meet her eyes. You laughed at a child because you couldn't imagine someone like me being her mother. That tells me everything I need to know. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. The officer shifted on his feet, torn between fear and defiance. He glanced toward his car, as though wishing for backup, for someone else to step in and salvage his pride. But no one came. It was just him. A girl he tried to break, and a mother who had already faced down far greater threats than him. Maya's heart pounded so hard it hurt. Part of her wanted her mother to unleash all the power she carried, to make him feel even a fraction of the humiliation he had put her through. Another part wanted to run, to leave the street and never look back. But then came the turning point, the moment that seared itself into her memory. Her mother didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. Instead, she simply held her badge, steady, eyes locked on his, and said words that cut deeper than any shouted accusation. You saw a young black girl, and you decided she was less than human. Tonight you answer to me. The officer's face drained of color. For the first time, Maya saw fear flash in his eyes, not the kind born from danger, but from being exposed. The silence stretched again. A car slowed nearby, someone staring from their window, sensing the weight of what was unfolding. Maya's breathing slowed, but her chest still ached with everything that had been stolen from her in those tense minutes. Her safety, her dignity, her innocence. This wasn't just about a traffic stop. It wasn't just about one cop, one girl, or one night. It was about a system that allowed this to happen at all. And as her mother's words hung in the air, unshakable and final, Maya realized this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The street finally seemed to exhale, but for Maya, the weight of the night lingered like a bruise on her chest. The officer, shaken and pale, mumbled something about misunderstanding, about doing his job. But those words didn't erase the humiliation she had endured, the laughter, the disbelief, the way her very existence had been reduced to suspicion. Her mother didn't argue further. She didn't need to. The silence of accountability was louder than any defense he could muster. Together, they gathered Maya's scattered belongings, her notebooks, her worn-out track shoes, the things that, just moments earlier, had been tossed aside as if they were evidence of guilt. Her mother's hands were steady as she brushed dirt off the pages, but Maya noticed a tremor in her jaw, the tightness in her shoulders. She was furious, not just at what had been done, but at the fact that it had to happen at all. When they finally walked away, Maya clung to her mother's presence, but her mind was elsewhere, spinning, questioning, replaying. She thought about how quickly everything had escalated, how powerless she had felt, how one man's prejudice had turned an ordinary evening into a nightmare. And though her mother's intervention had changed the outcome, it didn't erase the truth. If she had been alone, things could have ended very differently. That thought stayed with her. It was heavier than fear. It was awareness. Awareness that for people like her, safety was never guaranteed. That dignity could be stripped in seconds. That even children weren't shielded from suspicion when their skin told a different story than the world wanted to hear. Back home, as she sat in her room, Maya tried to return to normal, her textbooks, her playlists, her track shoes neatly placed by the door. But nothing felt normal anymore. Because she now knew firsthand what it meant to be seen not as a person, but as a threat, her mother sat beside her, finally speaking softly, not as a soldier but as a parent. She explained that what happened that night wasn't just about one officer's arrogance, it was part of something deeper, something that stretched far beyond their street. A system of assumptions and prejudices that had shadowed generations before them, and would continue unless it was challenged. Maya listened, and she realized something important. Her silence in that moment hadn't been weakness. It had been survival. And her survival wasn't just her own, it was an act of resilience against a world that too often tried to erase voices like hers. The incident didn't vanish in a memory. It became a part of her. When she returned to school, when she laced up her running shoes, when she looked at her mother before practice, it lived in the back of her mind. Not as a scar meant to weaken her, but as a reminder of the strength it took to endure and the responsibility to make sure others didn't have to face the same, because what happened on that street wasn't rare. It wasn't an isolated mistake. It was a mirror of something far larger, far uglier, and far too common. And that's the truth that stings the most. For every Maya, there are countless others whose stories never reached the light. Children questioned for walking home. Parents mocked for who they are. Families forced to prove their worth again and again to a world that should already see it. So the question is not just what happened that night, it's what continues to happen every day. How many more children will have to stand frozen under flashing lights, praying they make it home? How many more mothers will have to step in to prove their children's innocence? And most importantly, when will we finally stop pretending this is just an accident, instead of the reality it has always been? This isn't just Maya's story. It's our story. It's the story of a nation. The only question left is, will we keep watching it repeat, or will we finally decide to change the ending? If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it, talk about it, and leave your thoughts below, because every voice raised is one step closer to change.